For over 10 years, two men experienced Hitler's presence more intimately than anyone else. Harry Braun served as his pilot, and Erich Kemp worked as his driver. They quietly observed the private side of his life. In April of 1945, Braun offered him one final opportunity to flee. Hitler declined. A few days after, Kemp delivered the fuel that ended up burning his body. When the war concluded, these two faced a question only they could respond to. What do you do after chauffeuring or flying history's most infamous dictator? While generals and ministers competed for his focus in bustling meetings, Harry Braun and Erich Kemp witnessed Hitler in his most vulnerable states, during extended flights, riding in the back seat, when he was relaxed. Harry Braun was a World War I ace with 6 officially confirmed victories, who became Hitler's personal pilot after flying for Lufthansa as a commercial aviator. Erich Kemp started as a reserve driver, but eventually took charge of Hitler's entire automobile fleet. In 1933, Hitler personally selected Braun as his official pilot. To equip him with the needed authority to oversee Hitler's security, Himmler appointed him as an SS Standartenführer that October. This rank symbolized Hitler's confidence and allowed Braun to lead his expanding aviation division. By the end of the war, he was in command of a fleet of 40 aircraft, ranging from bulky Junkers transport planes to streamlined Focke-Wulfs. In 1936, Hitler picked Kemp to manage the whole motor fleet, overseeing the black Mercedes limousines and organizing rigorous security for every journey. The SS Begleitkommando operated under his command, guaranteeing Hitler's protection while traveling. Their roles brought them unusually close to Hitler in private moments. Harry Braun piloted him throughout Germany during political tours, spending long hours alone with him in the cockpit. On the road, Hitler frequently sat up front next to Erich Kemp, with only a valet seated behind. In these intimate settings, both men overheard confidential discussions and witnessed actions that clashed with Hitler's public persona. His motorcades were always followed by vehicles carrying security personnel, aides, doctors, journalists, and secretaries. From this position, they developed an unfiltered understanding of Hitler's real character. Unlike ministers who encountered him during formal meetings or generals in strategic war sessions, Braun and Kemp observed him in simple, everyday situations. Hitler acknowledged their faithfulness. Braun was gifted a personal Mercedes-Benz for his 40th birthday, and Kemp received the SS Honor Sword, distinctions that set them apart from ordinary staff. This unique proximity soon became their greatest advantage and simultaneously their most perilous risk. By April of 1945, their years of quiet observation propelled them into the heart of history's concluding chapter. As Soviet artillery bombarded Berlin, Harry Braun made a last, urgent suggestion. He had noticed an improvised airfield in the Tiergarten near the Brandenburg Gate, just sufficient for a Fieseler Fee 156 Storch to take off. A few days before, the pilot Hannah Reed had confirmed this was possible. Landing the identical aircraft in that exact location on April 26th was possible because the small STOL plane required hardly any runway and could maneuver through the ruined city where usual escape routes had vanished. Hitler declined to leave. Even as the Red Army advanced on the Reich Chancellery, he refused to abandon Berlin. Both Harry Braun and Erich Kemp remained inside the Führer bunker during those final days, dedicating themselves to their duties while the regime disintegrated above them. The underground shelter had transformed into a suffocating refuge, overcrowded with aides, officers, and staff desperately holding on to faint hopes. Braun still retained his position as Hitler's pilot. Meanwhile, Kemp managed transportation despite the fact that no vehicles were left to operate. Braun's suggestion became a turning point in his professional relationship with Hitler. He had even proposed using a Ju 390, an enormous long-range transport that offered a higher chance of success than the delicate Storch. Hitler had never flown on such an aircraft and refused the idea. On April 29th, during their final conversation, Hitler said goodbye to Braun and the other pilot, George Bates. This ended over 10 years of trust in Braun's expertise. Within a few days, the makeshift Tiergarten airstrip was rendered useless, destroyed by Soviet artillery and debris. Inside the bunker, tension grew as Hitler made his final decisions. Braun and Kemp observed him drifting further from reality, still issuing commands to armies that no longer existed, while Soviet forces neared overhead. They witnessed his outbursts directed at subordinates and the visible breakdown of his physical condition. Erich Kemp's most somber task was assigned by Otto Grant, Hitler's adjutant, to gather the fuel necessary to cremate Hitler and Eva Braun's bodies. Kemp and his men collected approximately 8 to 10 Army petrol cans, totaling around 180 to 200 liters, and transported them to the bunker's emergency exit. Only then did he understand the purpose of the fuel. Following Hitler's death on the 30th of April, both men attempted to escape the bunker by separate routes. Harry Braun was shot in both legs during his breakout and soon captured by Soviet forces. His injuries were so severe that medical personnel in a prison hospital near Poznan amputated his right leg on the 10th of June, 1945. Kemp managed to slip away on the 1st of May, traveled through Wittenberg, and eventually arrived in Berchtesgaden in southern Germany, where American soldiers apprehended him on the 20th of June. Because of their close proximity to Hitler during his final days, both men became prime targets for Allied interrogators. Their arrests exposed stark contrasts in how the Soviets and Americans valued the intelligence each could provide. When Harry Braun regained consciousness in a Soviet prison hospital, having lost his right leg, he realized that being Hitler's pilot had made him one of Stalin's most sought-after captives. To the Soviet authorities, he was far more than a mere aviator. They suspected he might have aided Hitler in escaping Berlin or even transported stolen valuables to safety, including the legendary Amber Room. His expertise in flying and his intimate connection with Hitler elevated his status to a high-priority subject for Soviet intelligence, who believed that he held crucial information worth extracting. Meanwhile, Kemp's fate was shaped by his capture at the hands of the Americans. After being taken prisoner, Erich Kemp spent time in a standard POW camp until October of 1947. The Americans valued him not for any alleged war crimes, but for his direct experience in the bunker. Their questioning centered mainly on Hitler's last days and the moments following his death, rather than pursuing broader charges related to transport personnel. This difference in treatment exposed the varied focuses of the Allied forces. Harry Braun, on the other hand, remained in Soviet captivity for a decade. His interrogations were exhaustive, designed to uncover hidden offenses, escape attempts, and the movements of high-ranking Nazis. To the Soviets, his role as Hitler's pilot placed him beyond mere witness. He was seen as a potential accomplice with crucial knowledge to extract. For the Americans, Erich Kemp's significance was straightforward. He was the first captured witness able to verify Hitler's death. Their main goal was reconstructing the regime's final days instead of prosecuting drivers. Years afterward, during a conversation with James O'Donnell, Kemp revealed he sometimes told interrogators what they wanted to hear just to protect himself. This gives a glimpse into the intense pressure these men experienced during questioning. Despite this, U.S. officials frequently cited his vivid, although not always accurate, descriptions of life inside the bunker in Hitler's last moments. Meanwhile, Harry Braun's experience in Soviet prisons and forced labor camps was far more grueling than the interrogations. His missing leg made the hard work especially grueling, and adjusting to the harsh camp routines was a constant challenge. As years went by without any hint of release, the uncertainty consumed him. The Soviets transferred him from one camp to another, creating a constant sense of instability that might have made him more willing to share information. When they were ultimately freed, a new struggle began. Life in a world that would forever view them through the lens of Hitler's closest associates. In 1957, after a decade behind Soviet bars, Harry Braun returned to Germany only to discover he could not find work. His extensive service to Hitler overshadowed his skills as a pilot. No airline or company wanted to employ the former aviator of the Third Reich. His missing leg served as a visible reminder of his history, but the true barrier was the lingering stigma. Despite his aviation expertise, the shadow of Hitler completely defined his reputation. Erich Kemp experienced similar difficulties after his release from American custody in October of 1947. He returned to a Germany that had been through denazification and was eager to erase its Nazi past. Former SS members like Erich Kemp faced hostility from neighbors and job prospects once they learned about their involvement during the war. Both men realized that the close connection to Hitler that once granted them status and special treatment had transformed into a mark of social exclusion in the post-war world. Their experiences raised a persistent question. Were they merely a pilot and a driver fulfilling their responsibilities, or did serving so close to Hitler implicate them? Neither of these men was ever tried for war crimes. Financial pressures compelled both men to write about their personal encounters with Hitler. Harry Brown released his memoir titled, I Flew the Powerful of the Earth, which he later expanded as With the Powerful Between Heaven and Earth. Eric Kemp's initial memoir came out in 1951 under the name I Burned Adolf Hitler, and it was reissued in 1975 as The Final Days with Adolf Hitler. For each of them, these books served as a means of livelihood and a method to present their own perspective on the events. The public's reaction to their memoirs ignited significant debate among historians and audiences alike. Doubts were raised about the accuracy of their recollections, and accusations emerged suggesting they aimed to cleanse their involvement in the Nazi regime. Some perceived the writings as opportunistic endeavors to gain financially from their ties to Hitler. Their deepest conflict revolved around their identity. Their sole claim to historical significance stemmed from their service to Hitler, whether by flying him or driving him. The question remained, how do you define yourself when your most prominent role was transporting a dictator? This dilemma haunted them throughout their lives. Many years later, in 2008, Kemp's name appeared unexpectedly during the U.S. military trial of Salim Hamdan, the driver of Osama bin Laden. Defense attorneys cited Kemp as evidence that chauffeurs should not be automatically labeled war criminals. Ultimately, Eric Kemp and Harry Brown provided history with a rare eyewitness account of Hitler's last moments, yet they bore consequences that continued long after the war had ended. Far beyond the cockpits and car seats where their duty began, these individuals did not influence Hitler's choices, yet their entire existence was molded by them. When the regime they served so loyally finally crumbled, they confronted a harsh reality as intense as any battlefield experience. Being close to power brought both honor and a lifelong weight. If you are interested in discovering what became of others who lived close to Hitler, consider watching What Happened to Hitler's Bodyguards After the Second World War. Remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and activate the notification bell so you won't miss more content about the Second World War. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video.